I caught my family hosting secret gatherings at my country house. They made spare keys without telling me, and when I showed up, they told me to leave. I never thought I'd be writing something like this, but I still can't wrap my head around what happened. I feel angry, betrayed, and honestly a little heartbroken. The backstory. A couple of years ago, I, 34M, bought a small country house, not a mansion or anything fancy, just a cozy place outside the city where I could escape on weekends, recharge, and have some peace. It was one of my proudest purchases. I worked long hours, saved every penny, and finally treated myself to something that felt like mine. This house isn't just property, it's my sanctuary. I planted a little garden, set up a hammock, and even made a corner where I paint. It's my quiet place away from all the noise. I made it clear from the start that it was my house. I never gave anyone else permanent access. My family knew about it, of course, but I rarely invited them because I wanted this to be a personal retreat. The suspicion. Over the past few months, something felt off. A couple of times when I came to the house, I noticed small things. The chairs on the porch were moved. There were extra dishes in the sink. The fridge had food that I didn't buy. At first, I brushed it off. Maybe I was being forgetful. Maybe I'd left things differently last time. But it kept happening. The final straw was when I went to water my plants and realized someone had already watered them. That's when I knew someone had been there. The discovery. Last Saturday, I decided on a whim to drive out there without telling anyone. It was around noon when I pulled up to my driveway. And what do I see? My parents, my sister, my cousins, the whole crew, having a barbecue in my yard like it was their vacation house. Music was playing, drinks were flowing, food was on the grill. They were laughing, lounging, and acting like they owned the place. For a second, I thought maybe it was some kind of surprise or joke. But the look on their faces when they saw me walk up the driveway told me everything. They froze. It was the look of people caught red-handed. The confrontation. I asked the obvious question. What the hell are you all doing here? How did you even get in? My cousin stammered something about just wanting to relax. My sister tried to change the subject. Finally, my dad admitted they had made a copy of my key a while back and had been using the house every other weekend. I was speechless. They'd been throwing secret family gatherings at my house without telling me, like it was some community property. When I said, "This is my house, not yours," do you know what they told me? "Well, maybe you should go. We're in the middle of lunch, and you're making it awkward." They told me, the owner of the house, to leave. The aftermath. I lost it. I shouted that they had no right to be there, that they had violated my trust, that making spare keys behind my back was basically breaking and entering. My mom tried to guilt-trip me. "We're family. We just wanted a nice place to gather. Why are you being so selfish?" Selfish? For wanting my own house respected? I told them all to get out immediately. Some left grumbling, others looked embarrassed, but they all packed up and went. The silence afterward felt heavy. My sanctuary suddenly felt tainted. Where things stand. Now my phone is blowing up with messages from relatives calling me dramatic and ungrateful. They say I should be happy my house brings everyone together. My sister even said, "It's not like you're there every weekend. Why let the place go to waste?" But that's not the point. It's not about how often I go there. It's about boundaries. About respect. I've already changed the locks and installed cameras. No one is stepping foot in there without my permission again. But I can't shake the betrayal. These are people I grew up with, trusted, loved, and they decided my personal retreat was theirs to use. When I drove away from the vacation house that night, my hands were still shaking on the wheel. My own family, people I had grown up with, trusted, and thought would at least respect basic boundaries, had been secretly partying in my property behind my back. And the worst part? When they saw me, instead of apologizing or explaining, they had the audacity to tell me to leave. The ride home was silent except for my thoughts racing. Every detail replayed, the laughter I heard before I walked in, the smell of grilled food, the music echoing down the hall, the way everyone froze when they saw me in the doorway. I can't get over the look on my cousin's face when he actually stepped forward and said, "Maybe you should leave, this isn't a good time." Excuse me? My house? The one I bought with my money, furnished with my hard work, kept up with my sweat. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept thinking about how long this had been going on. Who made the keys? How many people had copies? How many weekends had my so-called family lounged around in my living room, eating my food, drinking on my porch, swimming in my pool, while I sat at home thinking I was keeping it private? The next morning, I drove straight to the locksmith. By noon, every lock in that house was changed. The vacation house, the shed, the gate, even the garage, all of them. I wasn't going to risk another family reunion at my expense. But I knew this wasn't just about locks. This was about trust, or rather, betrayal. Sure enough, as soon as word spread, my phone blew up. First it was my sister. "Why did you change the locks?" she demanded. "Because it's my house," I answered coldly. "You're being dramatic. We were just using it to relax a little. It's not like you were there anyway." That sentence hit me like a punch. It's not like you were there anyway. As if my absence gave them the right to invade my space, as if my property only had value when I was inside it. I hung up. Next, it was my aunt. She tried the guilt trip angle. "You don't understand, it's just family. We're not strangers. You're making a big deal out of nothing." But here's the thing, it wasn't nothing. It was everything. It was my boundaries, my privacy, my investment, and frankly, my dignity. A few days later, I got invited, well, more like pressured, to attend a family dinner, to talk things out. Against my better judgment, I went. The dinner was awkward from the second I stepped in. Everyone was there, my parents, my sister, my cousins, a couple of uncles and aunts. The same group I had caught at my house. The air was thick, and I could tell they'd already been talking about me before I arrived. Finally, my uncle cleared his throat. "Listen, we're sorry you found out the way you did," he started. I laughed bitterly. "The way I found out? You mean by walking into my own house and catching you red-handed?" The room went quiet. Then my mother spoke softly. "We just thought it was nice for the family to have a place to gather. You weren't using it that much, so we thought." "You thought wrong," I snapped. "You broke my trust. You stole my privacy. You acted entitled to something that doesn't belong to you. And then, when I showed up, you had the nerve to tell me to leave." No one had an answer for that. My cousin looked down at his plate. My sister rolled her eyes. My dad tried to change the subject. I realized, in that moment, that the house wasn't just a vacation home anymore. It had become a test. A test of whether my family could respect me as an individual, not just as one of them. And they had failed, spectacularly. I stood up from the table. From now on, no one goes to that house without my permission. Ever. I've changed the locks, I've set up cameras, and if I find out anyone tries to sneak in again, I won't hesitate to call the police. Family or not. The silence that followed was deafening. When I left, I knew I'd probably just declared war on my own family. But honestly, I didn't care anymore. Sometimes the only way to protect yourself is to draw the line so clearly that no one can pretend not to see it. And that's exactly what I had done. After that chaotic Sunday, my life turned upside down. I thought that after I made it clear the cottage was mine, after I confronted them with the locks, the receipts, and the reality that they had no right to secretly use it as their personal playground, things would settle down. Maybe they'd be angry, maybe they'd go no contact for a while, but eventually they'd cool off. That's not what happened. Instead, my family doubled down. Within a week, rumors started spreading in my extended family WhatsApp group. The one where cousins, aunts, uncles, even people I barely knew were all connected. Suddenly I was reading messages like, "He's lost his mind, kicking out his own family. He always was selfish, now we see it clearly. Who even buys a house in the countryside and doesn't share with family?" It felt like they were trying to rewrite the entire story, to paint me as the villain. I wasn't the one sneaking around. I wasn't the one making duplicate keys behind someone's back. I wasn't the one drinking wine and having parties on property that wasn't mine. And yet, somehow they had twisted it so that I was the greedy one. It got worse when I started getting phone calls from aunts and uncles. "Son, you should apologize. Your parents only wanted a place to gather everyone. Why are you making such a fuss about a cottage? It's not like you live there every day. You're tearing the family apart over some bricks and wood." Every call chipped away at me. I couldn't believe how blind they were, or maybe how manipulative my parents and siblings were being in telling their version of events. Then came the boldest move yet. One Saturday morning, I drove back to the cottage. I had already changed the locks, but when I pulled up, I froze. There were cars in the driveway. Again. I unlocked the door with my key, pushed it open, and there they were. My parents, my brother, my sister, and even a couple of cousins this time. They were sitting around the table, plates of food already out, as if they'd been living there all week. I was stunned. "How the hell are you even inside?" "I changed the locks." My brother smirked, almost proud. "Locks are easy. You really thought a new lock would stop us? You're family. You can't lock family out." That sentence made my blood boil. The entitlement. The absolute arrogance of it. I raised my voice, "This is my property. You don't live here. You don't get to break in and act like I'm the intruder." But instead of looking guilty, my mom had the audacity to say, "We were here first. This place only means something because of us. Don't forget who raised you, who made you who you are. You owe us." I was shaking at that point. My own mother telling me that I owed them my house. I called the police. For the first time in my life, I actually dialed the police on my own family. I don't think they believed I'd do it, not until the officers arrived and asked everyone to leave the property immediately. My family tried to argue, but once I showed the deed and proof of ownership, it was clear-cut. The officers told them plainly, "If you're caught here again without his permission, it's trespassing." Seeing their faces as they filed out was surreal. Anger, betrayal, disbelief. My dad muttered something under his breath about me being heartless. My sister cried dramatically. My brother glared at me like I had destroyed some unspoken bond. But the truth? I felt a small surge of relief. Finally, there were consequences. Finally, it wasn't just me saying they were wrong. Of course, the fallout didn't end there. They went on a full smear campaign. Suddenly I was the ungrateful son, the cold-hearted brother, the selfish relative who called the police on his own family. My phone buzzed with angry messages. Some cousins even blocked me after sending a final, "You disgust me," text. But then something unexpected happened. A few people quietly reached out to me in private. A cousin I hadn't spoken to in years messaged. "Honestly, I've seen the way they use people. Don't let them guilt you. You did the right thing." An uncle even admitted he'd had similar experiences. They'd borrow his things and never return them, they'd invite themselves to his vacation home. He told me he admired me for standing up to them. That support was a lifeline, because truthfully, I was starting to question myself. Was I too harsh? Should I have just let it go? But deep down, I knew that if I hadn't drawn the line now, they would have kept pushing, kept taking, until nothing in my life was really mine anymore. And yet, the war isn't over. A week ago, I got a letter in the mail. It was from my parents' lawyer. They're actually trying to claim partial ownership of the cottage, saying they invested time and effort into it and that family property cannot belong to just one person. It's absurd. Legally, they don't have a leg to stand on. But the fact that they're willing to drag me into court over this shows just how far they're ready to go. I sat at my kitchen table holding that letter, my hands trembling. This wasn't just about a cottage anymore. This was about control. About boundaries. About the fact that my family couldn't stand the idea that I had something of my own that they couldn't claim. And now, I'm faced with a choice. Do I keep fighting, take them to court, and risk destroying whatever fragile bonds remain? Or do I walk away, maybe even sell the cottage, just to have peace, but lose something that was supposed to be mine? As I write this, I still don't know what I'll do. But one thing is clear, that moment when I walked in and saw them partying in my house, the look on their faces when they realized they'd been caught, it changed everything. They thought they could keep their secret forever. They thought I'd never stand up for myself. They thought family meant unlimited access. But now they know, I won't let them steal from me again. After weeks of silence, lawyers, tense text messages, and sleepless nights, I thought maybe my family had finally realized what they did was wrong. I imagined that maybe, just maybe, they'd reach out with something resembling an apology. But instead, they doubled down. One Friday evening, just as I was finishing dinner, I heard shouting outside my home. I looked through the window and saw my uncle's truck parked across my driveway. My aunt, cousins, and even my parents were standing outside with bags. My heart immediately sank. I stepped outside and asked them what on earth they thought they were doing. My mother, without hesitation, said, "We need the cottage this weekend. You know we've always spent summers there, it's tradition." "You're being unreasonable." Unreasonable? That word made my blood boil. This wasn't a misunderstanding anymore, it was entitlement in its purest form. I told them clearly, the key copies are illegal. You broke my trust. You don't get to just demand entry anymore. That was when my cousin snapped. He shouted that I was selfish, that the whole family hated me now, and that if I wasn't going to use the cottage properly, then I didn't deserve it. I laughed bitterly and told him he could take that logic to court, because I was done. At that moment, my father, the man who had taught me about honesty when I was a kid, said something that shocked me to my core. "If you don't share it with us, then maybe you shouldn't have it at all." I realized then that this wasn't just about a vacation house. It was about control. They didn't respect me, or the effort I put into buying that cottage. They simply felt entitled to whatever I had. I told them to leave. My mother refused. My father refused. My cousins mocked me, saying I couldn't make them. So I did the one thing they didn't expect, I called the police. When the patrol car pulled up, the look on their faces was priceless. My father tried to argue with the officers, claiming it was a family misunderstanding. But I showed the cops my ownership papers and explained the situation, including the illegal key copies. The officers told them plainly, "This property belongs to him. If you don't leave, it's trespassing." Watching my parents and cousins pack their bags under police supervision was one of the most surreal moments of my life. My mother glared at me like I was the villain. My father refused to make eye contact. My cousins cursed under their breath. But they left. That night, I changed the locks again. I installed cameras. I reinforced the gate. I turned that cottage into a fortress not because I wanted to, but because I had no choice. My own blood had declared war on me for daring to say no. The fallout was immediate. My family cut me off from group chats. They told extended relatives that I had turned on them and called the cops on my own parents. The guilt trips were endless. Some relatives reached out, telling me I should have handled it differently, that family comes first. But when I asked them if they'd be okay with relatives secretly breaking into their homes every weekend, they went quiet. Weeks turned into months. No apologies ever came. Instead, rumors spread, that I was greedy, that I had abandoned the family. But you know what? I slept better at night. I finally had peace. Fast forward to now. The cottage has become my sanctuary again. I've invited real friends over. People who respect me, who don't see me as a walking bank or a free vacation host. For the first time in years, the property feels like mine again. As for my family, we barely speak. My parents occasionally send me bitter emails asking if I'll ever forgive them for one mistake. One mistake? No. This was a choice. A pattern. A betrayal. I've accepted that blood doesn't automatically equal loyalty. Family can stab you in the back just as easily as strangers. Maybe more so, because they know where to cut deepest. So here's the lesson I want to leave with anyone reading: never ignore your instincts. If you feel used, you probably are. If someone feels entitled to what you worked for, you're not obligated to hand it over. Set boundaries, even if it means standing alone. Because I'd rather stand alone in peace than stand with a family who never truly respected me. And that, finally, is the end of the cottage saga.